Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode with Corey. I want to have a conversation with Corey. As previously mentioned, we're doing this so that we can have a bridge across to our potential clients and what they think about money. What is, preventing them from getting a financial advisor, or if they have a financial advisor, how's their experience and what are their expectations? So we're going to take a few moments and unpack this with Corey. Corey has been generous enough to give us time here, so let's welcome Corey in. Corey, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure and happy to talk all things money. It's one of my first personal favorite topics, and so it's just good for me.
Awesome. So we're not going to go into anything specific, but at least in general terms, if you're able to give me, what is your first memory of money?
Yeah, it's funny because when I was thinking about this, I couldn't think of anything else besides what I think is my earliest memory of money, which is actually me stealing from my mom's purse, because I think I realized what money was and sort of was associated with I can buy toys and I can use it to mainly like buy Legos and toys and go shopping and stuff like that. And then once I realized that my mom had a lot of this money, I figured, well, why don't I just take it? So I remember stealing from her purse and finding, it was like $1.50 or something, because I didn't want to steal too much or all of it. And then she later asked me about it, and I'm pretty sure I lied, but eventually, sort of fessed up and gave it back to her. But, actually my first memories, just sort of like trying to think about like how I think about money and memories of interactions with money. I grew up super, super frugal. My mom was a middle school teacher, and my dad was a bus driver for special ed kids in the San Diego school district here where I'm based. And we never vacationed, never really ate out, but we grew up pretty well. And I knew that sort of that frugality was a big part of why we were able to live in the house that we had and, live the sort of nice life that we did have, able to go to private school because my parents were really good with money. And actually, I think my first real, concrete memory of money was when I was in high school and I took my first kind of job, and I got my first paycheck and just realized how much was going out to taxes and how little money you actually get at the end of the day. But that also helped me really kind of, formulate, okay, this is how the world works. This is how you get money. This is how, this is where money goes. This is what you start to do with it. And it wasn't too long after that I started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which really changed my perspective about money and business forever. And so those are kind of my earliest memories at different stages of my life.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think for me as well, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the first introduction. Before I was involved in the financial advisor world, I'm not anymore, but for 20 years I was. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is kind of where I learned about money and the idea that you can use money to not just buy depreciating assets, but potentially appreciating assets and assets that can generate more money for you, right? So is that where you started, I guess, and you don't have to go into your specific examples, but is that where you started saying, okay, I need to start saving? Was that your first kind of exposure to that world?
Yeah, I think I knew that, I had to be good with money and that I wanted to do something eventually. I think the hard part and what a lot of people, kind of go through is that they don't have a lot. And so reading something like a Rich Dad, Poor Dad, even though he has examples of I bought this, $20,000 dump house and then I fixed it up and sort of leverage partners or whatever. It's well, that isn't the most attainable thing, right? And so the first thing for me was just being smart with the little money that I did have and not budgeting to a T, but really just understanding, okay, I'm not going to use my credit cards frivolously. I'm going to build credit. I'm going to, have a checking and savings account. I'm going to start investing a little bit. I started using an app called Acorns several years ago. I can't even remember how long it was now,
sure.
like 6 or 7 years ago. Just, letting that compound and making these little deposits here and there. And so it wasn't so much just super actionable, but it was definitely just changed the way that I thought about it and definitely allowed me to avoid some of the big mistakes too. Actually one of my early financial goals was to graduate from college without any student loan debt. And thankfully, I managed to literally skim by on the skin of my teeth, with $0 in debt. Because I think the first 2 years I went to community college because of that decision. And I ended up getting paid because of a couple of grants and scholarships that I received, about $3,000. And then the difference over the next 2 years that I had to make up for all my scholarships and grants was about $2,000 a year. And so I ended up just paying out of pocket about, $500 total to go to school. I didn't have any student loans. So
Nice.
things like that, right? That really allowed me to avoid some of the big mistakes or like big pitfalls and setbacks, and set myself up for success later.
Right. It's interesting. I wish that the US system would teach us about money at an earlier age rather than, similar to your experience. I've talked to many other folks is, they start figuring this out a little bit later in life, right, than if they were starting earlier. Where do you go today, or how did you even come across the book, for example, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Where do you go to get, advice or your questions answered about money?
Yeah, there were a couple people who were sort of, father figure-esque type people in my life when I was in high school. The fathers of a couple of friends who were both in, either like own their own business or basically like managed a business. And that was definitely like a big, they were sort of big influences, and I'll pick up things from them, and they would talk about it, and I would hear things from my friends as well about what they were doing. And, one of my best friends, even to today, started working for his dad in high school and was saving really, really aggressively. And my other friend who was working for his dad, he was starting, a little like vending machine business. And so just being able to see that and pick up on it a little bit definitely was sort of like an input for me. But then there was another friend who was very entrepreneurial and very like extroverted kind of salesperson. And someone had given him Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he read it and he passed it along to me and said, "Hey, dude, you have to read this." And so a lot of it was just friends early on, just people in my life. It wasn't until later after that sort of like sent me down the rabbit hole, where then I was, picking up more books, and I was listening to podcasts, and I was, reading blogs. I was an early reader of, Mr. Money Mustache, and I was the Listen Money Matters podcast. I love the Financial Samurai blog, Bigger Podcasts blog and podcast mainly. More recently, Invest Like the Best with Patrick O'Shaughnessy, Modern Finance with Kevin Rose, My First Million with Sean Puri and Sam Parr. I Will Teach You to Be Rich actually was I've been following Ramit Sethi for a long time.
Sure.
And then I finally picked up his book, and that was a huge one for me. I think it was a couple of years ago, just really understanding how to automate your finances, and also just kind of dispelling some of the myths out there about personal finance. Really, really recently, the Pop podcast, and it's a guy named Nat Eliason who writes a newsletter called The Almanac. It's part of like the subscription called the Every newsletter. So those are the big ones. I was really trying to look through like what have been like the biggest influences for me. There's been a whole bunch that have been like not super useful, or where maybe now I would even like disagree with. So I intentionally, excluded a lot of those. But today, those are the ones that kind of stand the test of time, and who
Sure.
I still, learn from, follow up on, and look back on to reference later too.
Sure. One of the things I had asked you previously, and you can, I guess, clarify, you currently don't have a financial advisor, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So have you ever had one, or have you just been motivated to learn on your own with all these different resources that you mentioned?
Yeah, definitely very self-motivated. In fact, out of high school, my goal was to become a financial advisor. And so I was really, into that anyways. And that's actually a part of kind of the journey that I forgot a little bit, and like just why I was so interested in it, and, wanting to absorb a lot of it. So I always had the idea that, well, if I'm going to be a financial advisor for other people, then I should probably be one for myself. I did not end up going down that path, but I think I've sort of stuck with the mindset of a financial advisor for myself.
And you're currently a business owner, right?
Yeah, self-employed.
Got it. So question for you would be, I come from a heavy financial advising background, right, for 2 decades. And I've dealt with thousands of clients, and we've helped them, retire and all of those things. I'm always curious to find out, for folks that don't have a financial advisor, is it something that because you haven't found one, or is that something you just feel like you just want to do it yourself? Because, it is something you could do yourself. So can you expand on that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I tell friends and family, and just people that I'm talking to, is that I think that there are some people who have really specific interests in things personal finance and money related, and there are some people that have really broad interests, and then there's some people that have like no interests whatsoever. And for the people who have no interest whatsoever, I tell them all the time, go get a financial advisor, or go get a manager, or go get someone who you can ask questions, or basically just do all the work for you. And then for people who have really specific interests, for example, maybe they're really, really interested in real estate, my advice to them would be, well, that's just only, that's part of the equation, but you still need to be thinking about a lot of other parts of life and personal finance and wealth management and wealth building. So you should get someone to sort of fill the gap for what you're not personally interested in or you don't have a competence in personally. And then there are some people, I would kind of put myself in this bucket, who are really broadly interested and who, sort of read up on it and learn about it and like doing it for fun, really. And I like it a lot. And so for me, it would be kind of a bummer to like hand that off to someone else, because that'd be something that I would, I want to have my hands in and have control over. And especially with the tools today, it makes it really, really easy to sort of individually steward your own money. But that's definitely like the minority. I would say for most people, they, even if they think that they should, they probably shouldn't manage themselves. Of course, I think that I am the exception to that rule, but
Sure.
That's normally how I think about it and talk about it with other people.
Sure. I'm going to kind of go a little bit deeper into what you just said, specifically the camp that you put yourself in, right? How would you go about, for example, tracking all the different changes that happen in, for example, just tax law, right? It's crazy. It almost seems like every 2 years, there's a whole new set of tax rules that are coming through and what have you. How do you today make sure that whatever's coming in the pipeline or whatever is just passed, how does that impact you, impact your long-term goals? What do you do for all of that today?
Yeah, the taxes bit is definitely one of those that I don't have a very strong interest in. And so I delegate that out to basically, since I'm self-employed, I have someone who I work with who does the taxes and accounting for myself personally and for my businesses. And so she's a tax professional and has been doing it for 40 something years. And so I lean on her for all things tax related and accounting related, and the different laws and changes and regulations and just new kind of strategies. And when I hit different milestones for income as well, ask her questions. I was just asking the other day about, getting ready to buy a house and, what to do for the future for the next couple of years, and just, ways to set ourselves up for success. Since we are self-employed, it's a little bit of an untraditional, path. You have to jump through a few extra hoops. So for her in that instance in particular, I lean on her for all things tax related.
Now, since you are also self-employed, financial advisors also do business planning, where they can help you with benefits planning, 401ks for your employees and what have you. What are your thoughts on getting professional help when it comes to, and when you have, I don't know how many number of employees you have and what have you, when you get to that level, what are your thoughts on getting professional help when, it's related to your business, for example?
So today I'm the only employee, or I'm actually not even an employee. I'm, self-employed technically. And so
Sure.
I don't have to worry about that bit quite yet. Later down the road, I'm not sure what exactly that looks like, but for my line of business and what I do, I sort of have like a personal business where I do all of my consulting, freelancing, and then I also have sort of a membership site and a couple of different, experiments that I all run through the same LLC. And in that case, I don't ever plan on bringing on an employee, so that'll never really change for me. I do have goals and sort of plans to partner and to start a more formal, C corporation with someone. And in that case, we do plan on eventually hiring people and building out a team. And when that time comes, probably a couple of years down the road, we'll probably consult with someone and ask, what the best practices are for benefits and things like that. But the startup world is a little bit interesting because most of the perks and advantages and benefits mostly come in the form of direct pay or remote work benefits and or equity compensation. It's normally more, for higher management in more established businesses or publicly traded companies, or, local business where you might find something like 401k and, all those sort of advanced things for your employees. I don't anticipate that we'll get to that stage where we'll need to do that.
Got it. Now, going back to you personally, you obviously have a high interest in finance. You wanted to be one, right? As a financial advisor specifically, you're kind of managing these things, your money and your assets yourself, right? Just to ask and unpack, not to try and convert you in any way, but I want to have the advisors that are going to be listening to this kind of listen on why you would not approach them, or why you would approach a financial advisor. Is there some perception you have or your thoughts? Would you mind just unpacking that a little for us?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think that, me being sort of in the world that I am in tech and entrepreneurship and sort of like on the edge of the internet a bit, I tend to be a really early adopter and sort of like always on the cutting edge of what's happening. And so for me, I sort of wonder not what someone, would tell me that I wouldn't already know, but basically I don't know what they know that I don't know, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of a marketing problem because a lot of people that I interact with and learn from are very public personalities online, and they teach and share everything that they know, and they're active on Twitter, and they're active on the newsletter, they're active on their blog. And personally, I don't know a financial advisor who is like that, who I would consider like a thought leader. And so the people that I follow and listen to have a podcast, or they have a newsletter, or they have a really active blog or a Twitter presence. And those are the people that are sort of proving through what they're sharing that they know what they're talking about. And I don't know what a financial advisor would bring to the table that I wouldn't get from a person like that, for example. Now, of course, there are a lot of administrative, tax, there are state and even, local kind of municipality nuances, right, that come into play. But in general, I think that a lot of financial advisors sort of have a marketing problem, not to toot my own horn here because I'm in marketing, but it's getting harder and harder to attract people unless you have an established and active online presence, because that's ultimately how you earn the trust with people and start to build that relationship is long before you even talk to them. So for me, that's just, how I've sort of been active, and that's how I've made a decision. That's who I choose who to interact with. And I'm not sure what I would get from a financial advisor that I wouldn't otherwise, or even, what to ask them, how to start that relationship.
Got it. So I will come to an end here, but I want to ask you, crypto and Bitcoin has taken off naturally just end last year and this year, right? What are your thoughts about investing or taking some money? I don't know. I use the word investing in quotes because it is so speculative in nature, right? But what are your thoughts of Bitcoin and crypto?
Yeah, so I think that in the next couple of years, people are going to really start to see crypto come to life in its truest form of what it's meant to be, and especially in the sense of decentralized finance, so DeFi. A lot of crypto and what people know as crypto is things like Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all these sort of like speculative, tokens that you can buy and hope that they appreciate in value and later sell to a greater fool, right, to someone else later down the road who it may or may not go up in value again. But that's a really limited view. It's very early days. If you look at the adoption cycle and sort of the maturity of a lot of different industries and waves of technology, in the beginning, it always starts with some sort of like nefarious purpose. And then it eventually evolves into something really basic where there's sort of money to be made. There's some sort of arbitrage. And then later you start to get to the phase where there really is a lot of tangible, functional, useful value, and there are things to be done. And then all of a sudden it sort of takes over, right? And then you have like all these social media apps, all these sites, the internet is a thing. And all of a sudden like the world is just different and it changes right before your eyes. Sort of this gradually and then suddenly idea, right? It's slow. There's nothing. And then all of a sudden like this is the future. This is the world that we live in now. And I think for crypto, the tokens and sort of appreciation is just the very beginning. What I think is going to be really exciting and what I'm personally the most interested in, what I think there's the most long-term value in, is in decentralized finance, which is basically replacing a lot of the traditional financial systems and tools and infrastructure, which are centralized with companies and governments and municipalities, countries, to individuals in a decentralized way where there isn't manipulation, there isn't fraud, there isn't, there's voting power where you get to choose how the money is used. So personally, I can tell you right now, I'm not buying some of these coins just hoping that they're appreciating. I'm actually, I'm buying and then borrowing against them. That way I don't have to sell, but I can actually collateralize and loan to myself. There are ways where you can essentially stake and mine your ownership in different coins and earn passive income on them in a very stable way. For example, the Coinbase partnered with a company called Circle, which is actually going public pretty soon, to create the USDC coin, which is basically a fully collateralized version of the US dollar, but in a crypto, what's called a stable coin. And that is just going to completely change the game, because now there is a crypto version of the dollar, and one USDC is always going to equal one USD. But now we don't have to send it back and forth through traditional apps. We don't have to store it in banks. We don't have to, do all these sort of centralized ways. We can invest it, we can loan it, we can use it to buy other crypto, we can earn USDC from other crypto. And so there's this huge wave of just all sorts of new ways you can use these DeFi apps for. Now we're seeing it in tokenized real estate. We're seeing it in tokenized stocks and bonds. We're seeing it in tokenized companies and ownership in companies. And so we're right on the tip of the iceberg right now. And DeFi is the future 100%. I think that it won't completely replace everything that we see today, but it'll absolutely change. And I think that it'll be the majority of how we interact with money in the future.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, Corey, for your time. I appreciate it. And for everybody that's watching or listening, thank you for your time. And this is Conversations with clients or potential clients of financial advisors. Thanks again, Corey.